Always like asking. Okay, good morning, everyone. Anyone got any particular problems with ESS BizTools products you'd like me to cover?
Not that I'm aware of. Narelle just stepped out very briefly.
Oh, okay.
So she might have.
Okay.
Now.
Well, I'll just start working through it then. If you've got any questions, this is the whole idea of a one-on-one webinar. You ask me. And now,
most of the team haven't used this at all.
Pardon?
Most of the team would probably haven't even accessed
this
at all. And I'm probably the only one that have used it, gone in there referring to material. So.
Okay, righto. Well, okay, we'll give you the cook's tour.
Okay.
Okay, so this is the members area when you've logged into ESS BizTools. And what we have on the left-hand side in the upper section, first of all, is the product packages that are included in the system. And I'll show you some of those shortly. And closer down the bottom, we've got some of the more background products, if you like. So we might go to them first to get started. Sections and papers. There's 68 sections in the first segment, and these are all containing papers and articles and forms that have been prepared for you to use with your clients. So they're written with a small, medium-sized business client in mind.
Sorry, Pete, there's nothing coming up. No change on the screen for us of what you're looking at.
There's no change on the screen. Oh, okay.
So we're still back at the members homepage and nothing changing.
Okay, let me just have a... Oh, right there. Can you see it now?
Okay, that's changed, yes.
I'd still had it left on paused. I'd hit that before. Sorry about that. Okay, so on the left-hand side, you've got the products menus. There's 23 of those, and they're all self-contained, and we'll have a look at those in a moment. And then further down, we've got this material for members. And the first one I thought I'd go to is sections and papers. That's where I was. And there's 68 sections in sections and papers. That is material targeted at small and medium-sized enterprises. So there's about 580 papers included in this area. So that goes through to number 495, I think, that we've reserved for material for businesses that you can badge and send to your clients. The sections in 500 through to, in effect, 599 is material we've prepared just for you, for accountancy businesses. So never send that to clients. No use telling them any of your trade secrets, sort of thing. And 900 is leadership, which has been written in the main by a separate consultant, but we've blended that within the system. So to just get an eye into some of these, to give you an idea how it all works, if you're looking for something on someone starting a business, just click on there, and then you have these various papers that have been written. They all have a number, so the first 3 digits relate to the section that they're in, and the others are just numbers we've allocated to them. The numbers really mean nothing to you unless you want to refer to them by the numbers, of course, but they're mainly there for our purpose to be able to find things that we're looking for. So if you're looking for a rating chart to assess your strengths and weaknesses to give to a client, you just click on it. There's always a précis or an executive summary as to what's in that particular article. So you can look at it and say, yeah, that's what I'd like to be able to hand to that client. That's what's in there. So there's a form, a rating chart to assess your strengths and weaknesses. there's a paper, and for every paper there's a PowerPoint set of slides. So if we want to download all that, and then we open it, and we will just go and get the paper. So there's that paper. Now this is a very short paper. Some papers are only short, some are 40 to 50 pages, depends what they are. Now these lines here, the double lines, are left for you to badge above there, so you can put your firm name, Prosper Solutions, and your logo, your address, whatever you like can go there, so it's branded when it goes to your clients. And we then have the material that's contained within the article. Okay, so when we've done that, if you
That
want
badging is done post-download. Sorry, Peter, that badging is done post-downloading of the report.
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
The badging of our name is done post-downloading the reports. It can't be done within the application automatically.
No, we did ask the programmer to look at that one stage. No, it's basically you've downloaded it into your
Sure.
your hard drive and you badge it there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But badging, I'll just make another note of that and put that back on our agenda. Papers. So that's the next item I just wanted to go through was the slides. So there's a set of PowerPoint slides for each paper. That you can utilize. We originally developed the PowerPoint slides for use in seminars or webinars. Some firms use them for their staff training. Some use them in discussions with small groups of people from a client's firm. That's really up to you how you utilize the material to achieve what you're trying to achieve. Now that process that there's a form there also that you could download. So that process works right throughout this system. So you go to the section, then go into this section, and you've got the articles that are contained therein that you're able to download and use. If you wish to edit any of the material, you can, but you're then responsible for it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The next one I just want to show you is client seminars, because I referred to that a moment ago. There's 35 seminars or webinars in the system. With each of these sort of products, you'll find that there is a webinar, and in some cases a couple of webinars, in other cases a video, just to give some explanation as to how you might go about utilizing the material. Within the seminars, when we first started this material some years ago in my own accounting firm, you could get people to come to 3-hour sessions on seminars. Some of our subscribers are still able to run 3-hour seminars, but in the main, it's become a lot more popular, I found, for 1-hour sections. So the seminars that are numbered 1,000 onwards are for a 1-hour seminar, and the ones before are for longer. And the first figure there is the number of sessions. So that business planning one there is 3 sessions of 3 hours, and it's all been configured, which I'll show you that in a moment. But it doesn't take as long to show a 1-hour seminar. So if we just go into that, differentiate your business with the one that I've selected there. So what we have in there is organisational material, which is generic in most cases. So it's there to guide you on how to run a seminar. Now, does your firm present seminars and webinars?
Not for some years, no. Currently,
Okay.
no. Not in the accounting area, no.
Okay. Well, these are just suggestions how you might go about it. There's some general hints on the presentation of a seminar if you're a bit concerned how you might go about it.
The difficult thing for us is getting attendees because our clients are everywhere. So
Well, therefore, webinars might be the answer. And all this material can be used just as easy in webinars. So there's some general hints that says seminar. I probably should write one on webinars. Hints, webinars. There's not much difference, but there's a little bit. Of course, you've got to make sure your technology's working right, and you remember to press all the buttons, and people can hear you. Webinars can be a bit more difficult because you might have 20 or 30 people on the line, and sometimes it works all right, but sometimes you'll have someone that can't hear you or something. That's part of the challenges. So that's just some guidelines there that might help you in thinking about a seminar or a webinar program. So you've got clients all over the place, have you?
Yes.
Okay. And there's various forms in there: registration, booking a venue, thank you letters for any keynote speakers. You can just work your way through those and see what's included in there, if that's all right. What I want to go to now is an actual seminar. So this one here, now this has only got one session. If it was one of those earlier ones that had 3 sessions, well, obviously we'd have 3 sessions specified here with a name that we're giving them. And all you then do is just click on the name, and it will then tell you what's in here. So this seminar is going to consider 2 papers: what makes you different from what makes you different, your competitive edge, and planning your business, small businesses. There's also the PowerPoint slides. So we can download all that. So we'll go to the paper first of all. Now, we're not suggesting you stand there and just read this out to attendees. After all, a seminar or a webinar is a marketing opportunity for your firm. But you could create a conversation, ask questions. If you've got any thoughts on how you line up on a competitive basis, what's your advantages? What's your unique differentiation from your competitors? Those types of comments, and get a discussion going amongst the people. Now, that's a bit more difficult in a webinar, especially where you might have 20 people on the end of a webinar, because it gets very noisy, I can assure you. And that's why a lot of people who present multi-venue webinars basically don't open up the communication channel, other than to say, if you've got a question, can you type it in, and we'll read it back out and answer it that way, because it does get very noisy. I used to, when I'm running promotional webinars, I used to have it on open, and it was that noisy. I heard dogs all over Australia. I heard phones ringing. It was quite amazing. So we just have people type in. But when you're doing what we're doing here now, that works because there's no noise coming from your end. You're all still there, are you? I assume you are. Oh, yeah, I heard you then. I heard you then. No, a very well-behaved audience. So there's the paper. Now, obviously, what ESS BizTools is all about is moving you away from the traditional public accounting market, if I can call it that, of preparation of annual accounts, tax returns, audit, perhaps some financial planning, and perhaps submission to banks. That was what I consider was basically the traditional area of accounting. We're trying to move our subscribers into really presenting advisory services. Now, advisory services start at a fairly low level, and some firms can work up to fairly intense areas of advice under the heading advisory. This material, some people might say, oh, this is marketing. Well, marketing's part of the brief because every business has got to worry about marketing. And we're really trying to assist you to perform a chief financial officer type role. I was a chief financial officer in a listed public company for 10 years, and I was also the public company secretary. I can assure you my life in a public company on the stock exchange was very different from being in public practice. Tax returns were not the main concern. Stock, foreign currencies, we were a major exporter, and what was happening in the world as far as currencies was concerned was very important. Our inventory levels, what was happening on our payments, were our letters of credit being prepared and checked when we got them from our customers, all that type of thing. But the other big issue was what I called the what if type questions that I used to get every day from the CEO and some of the other members of the management team. What if we change this? What if we change that? Can we do this? Can we go to a different market? We were Australia's second largest meat exporter or meat production company. So we were sending products all over the world, and there were choices that you can make, whether you're going to send something to Russia or you're going to send it to America, and obviously costing exercises. My real question to you is, haven't your clients, your SME type clients, got the same sort of problems? They're not just restricted to big companies, and big companies have got an advantage. They've got a whole team of in-house people that should be able to help them answer those questions. Unfortunately, most of our small and medium-sized business people really haven't got the in-house expertise, and most of them have not got an accountant that's they're advising them on these matters. So I'm envisaging this sort of work is definitely taking you beyond the traditional accounting area and other services. Now, I've looked at your website before. Your website indicates you do some of this work. Is that a big component of your work?
It's not currently a big component. I have a few clients. I do a CFO type role, monthly, quarterly reporting, but we don't have a lot of clients in that industry.
Oh, no.
It's trying to get those clients. In order to get those clients, we need our team to be comfortable and knowledgeable to talk about these sort of things.
And that's what this is. That's what this is about.
Is what it is, yeah.
We're trying to make you
comfortable. It's not just using this certain task. It's being able to read this beforehand and being able to educate yourself on just some basics on a business and things I think about makes you go into a meeting a lot more confident and be able to talk about certain things. That's why I see the value a lot.
Which industry groups would produce 80% of your fees?
The problem is most of our industry group is probably investment, so they're retired, the businesses have been sold.
Oh, okay.
Quite a few of the trade type entities, which is what we need to build back up again. So currently our current client base, we don't have a lot of ability to do this sort of work. We have a few, which we're working on, trying to get on board. But it's really just trying to get new clients.
Oh, okay. Righto.
Bit of an aging clientele that are selling down and businesses are being
sold.
And
okay.
Righto. Buy well.
Righto. I think one of the challenges that accountancy firms have got, basically, I'll put it another way, most of the accounting firms I talk to or get involved with as a consultant these days are not, in my opinion, are not marketing the firm's ability enough to the marketplace. And the marketplace is obviously your current clients, but it's also that broader group of people that I generally call prospects, because everyone else in your community, it's not a client or wherever you want to operate, is a prospect. And it's the message that you're giving them that I think is very important, that you're showing them that you're interested in doing this wider range of work. And we'll touch on some of that as we go through here. So to keep on moving, so this is the paper that you're going to talk about in the seminar, webinar, to if you wanted to talk to your clients about this sort of subject, and I think it's important. You would also utilize then, of course, the PowerPoint slides to guide you through this presentation. So you can talk to them about it. But I think what a firm's trying to achieve in a seminar or webinar is to communicate with your clients that you have an understanding of matters beyond what the market views as the traditional areas that accountants work in. I do a fair bit of consulting work that's funded by federal government grants, and we've got a grant program which I'm going to show you shortly. When I get appointments there, I haven't got an accountancy firm anymore, so we haven't got clients in the normal context. Some of them are consulting clients, but I invariably say to the new client that I've got, why did you select me to write your business plan or to do your mentoring or whatever it is? And they'll say, oh, well, the government person gave us your profile and we thought you were, but why didn't you go and talk to your own accountants? Oh, no, they only want to do tax. I said, if you ask them, oh, no, they that's all they ever talk to us about. That's all they ever send us is articles on tax. So I think one of the challenges accountants have got is to make sure that if you want to get into this market and create more work, that you're making sure that's the image that you're portraying to that market, because a lot of businesses people are looking around to see who can do some more advanced work for them.
Agree.
Okay, so there's the seminars. I won't dwell on that anymore. You can see how that works. I see seminars or webinars as a great communication tool. We've developed them there. We will be placing in the system a couple of more seminars this year that are able to be used, seminar webinars, so that you can take it from there. The next area I just wanted to move on to is because obviously I'm hoping that you people will go back and look at these things in more detail later on, is client mentoring and coaching. We developed this because I got a phone call one day from Perth from one of our subscribers some years ago now, and he said, help, I've got probably Perth's best business person in the SME category coming in to see me. I've been trying to get him as a client for 5 years, and I want to impress him that we are completely different to everyone else in Perth. And he said, which of your papers should I show him? Now, this was some years ago. We didn't have as many in those days, so I wrapped off about 6 papers. And he said, why don't you put it into a program so that next week when I got someone that's wanting to buy a business, I don't have to ring you again. So what resulted out of that was this product package, which we call mentoring and coaching, which has got 12 products in it that are listed there on the screen now of various matters. And we've got a couple more in progress to add to it during this year. And the whole idea of this is to help to educate a client. Because for those clients that think that their accounting firm only does taxation work, there is a gap that's got to be bridged if you're going to be proactive in earning fees from supplying this new type of work. And it is very interesting work for you accountants sitting in the room there. It's a variety from doing annual accounts and taxation work, and it's work that I think clients value far higher than what they do, the taxation process. It's got to be done, and they know that, but it's an area whereby you can influence them. Now, experience management, which was really the category that I answered that client in Perth that day, we've developed. we've got what we call 10 series. Now, some firms don't use all of the material, they tell me. Others are charging for this. That's up to you. You don't have to pay ESS any additional fees. It's not a franchise arrangement. So that what we've got in here, and I'll just show you one of the series. So the concept is that you start sending this information to a client to give them an experience. So in the first instance, we can download there's a letter to go to them. So this letter explains to the client what you're going to be doing, that you're going to be sending some material in installments. Some of our subscribers are in fact sending the whole lot of this series in one dispatch to the client. I don't like that. I think that's too much for them to read all in one go, and they probably won't read it. With every series, there's a survey form. So the survey form you would badge, and then you have the questions for the client. Now, in this series, there's only one article being sent to them, a rather long paper, characteristics of a well-run business. And what we're asking is for your client to indicate what they thought of it. If you get people answering 4 or 5, please send us an email, because I suspect that means there's something wrong with the article. We need to review it. Our suggestion is a few days after this has been emailed to your clients, that a member of the team ring the client and inquire whether they received the material, were they happy with it, have they got any questions? Because unashamedly, what we're trying to do is to get the client to appreciate that your firm is able to undertake work from their mind outside the square that they've probably put you in. And we're looking then to see whether they've got any questions out of that or any requests for some work to be done. So that's the purpose of that. And the follow-up's very important, because if they haven't got round to reading it yet, it gives them a bit of a jerk that they know they've got to get on with it. So we have in there a paper, characteristics of a well-run business. That you're able to read, so you badge that. There's always a set of contents. And what you're hoping to achieve, or what I'm hoping you'll achieve by sending this to your client, is you prompt them to start asking some questions and for them to determine whether they need some additional assistance from you. So whether they know enough about their customers, do they know enough about their industry? Are they looking at benchmark reports? Are they do they need some assistance? Over the years, I've gone to a number of specific industry conferences that clients ask me to go. I think it's been helpful for the client having a CFO type person sitting there with them and talking to them about some of the matters. But it was also very, very beneficial for me learning a lot more about a particular industry sitting through one of their conferences. So that's what this paper's all about. You'll see where we've got the blue links. They're links to other material within ESS BizTools. Just click on those and you can go around the system following through on particular leads. Okay. Any questions on how the mentoring coaching works?
No, it looks good. I'll look into that.
So that might help you with some of your clients who you're trying to educate that you are able to supply some additional services to. That's the whole idea. The other item that I just want to mention so you understand it's there, we produce a members alert each month. I've got to prepare the January one this afternoon. It's normally prepared a few days after the newsletter's prepared. So this was the December members alert. So obviously this only goes to members. We send you a video which does a bit of a summary. Crowdsource funding has been a major project of ours, which I'm going to talk to you about that product package in a moment. So we gave an update to our subscribers in that area, and what I'm publishing in this month's is the scoreboard, we're calling it, of what's going on in crowdsource funding, because it started on the 19th of October 2018. Have you got any clients that you know that might be interested in raising capital?
That's the income test, isn't it? I was looking at it the other day. I think the ones that I had, the income wasn't high enough in order to have this available.
High enough? It's got to be under 25 million.
Isn't there a minimum as well?
No minimum.
Minimum.
Can be a startup.
Okay.
No turnover.
Okay.
A startup would have to have a good story, of course, but I think it's the most exciting thing to happen for small businesses for at least 35 years. 35 years ago, Section 708 of the Companies Act started. And that was the first time that private companies were able to raise capital from the market in Australia. Now, that's got changed a couple of times, but it's basically you can raise up to $2 million from 20 investors. So that's Section 708. But the crowdsource funding is a lot broader. A company can raise up to $5 million in a 12-month period. And it has started. And companies have already raised capital. And that's what we're giving an update in this publication for this month, which you'll be getting in the scorecard. We're also been presenting a corporate governance network. We've been doing that via a series of webinars, and we were just giving an update on that, who was speaking. We've co-opted 6 keynote speakers to present in that, headed by Andrew Geddes. Any of you know Andrew Geddes or know of?
No, Andrew well, yeah.
Okay, so Andrew's telling everyone he's retired, but he really hasn't. He's just doing different work. He started FMRC, for any of you who might be a bit younger and haven't heard of him, and he was really the guru of management training for accounting firms. And we've based a lot of our material based on what he and the FMRC people were saying. We've got Paul Barnaby, who's a chartered accountant and the regional consultant for Plan Guru. He was speaking about budgets, 3-way budgets, obviously the budget, the cash flow, and the forecast balance sheet. We had a taxation update by one of our subscribers, Greg Reddington. So that was those 3. The other 3 are in other ones. One's on debtors management, one's on marketing and sales, and the other one's on workplace health and safety. So we've been running that series, so we're just giving an update on that. And we do sell those webinar recordings, access to them. So that was there. We had, in this members alert, we've been commenting about debtors problems for the last 2 years, I think. So it was great to see the Prime Minister announce that they were going to put some pressure on big business to make sure they pay SMEs within 20 days. Personal Property Securities Register, you doing any work in that area?
No, not anymore. In the past, we got into it trying to help our clients, but currently nothing.
I think it's a good idea to try to convince them they need an annual review, because this is like a thief in the night. No one knows it's coming. And if they have not taken the precaution, it's like not paying your insurance. That's when the cyclone will come or the fire will come and catch you unawares.
We spend a lot of hours with our clients.
Pardon?
When it all comes And initially, we spent a lot of time with our clients.
Yeah. Anyhow, we've included a bit of an update there because the first 7 years is now up. Well, it's up in a couple of days' time. So anyone that took out a 7-year cover in effect needs to now renew that. So that's a reminder. That's probably an invitation, Narelle, to go back and talk to those original clients that were involved in it, because this is where people will get caught. They'll forget the 7 years. So now, in effect, using insurance jargon, they're now not insured from the end of this month. So that's a reminder that's what we put in here to our subscribers. Why not get back onto the clients and say to them,
with the emails that come out from ESS BizTools, can you add other employees to that email?
Yeah, we can add everyone. If you give us all their names and emails, a number of our firms get us to do that, and we like doing that because it means everyone's getting the communication.
Yes.
So all employees on emails. I'll get. We'll follow that up with you on email.
Thank you.
We talked about Business Plus. Do you use Business Plus? That's the newsletter we write each month.
I definitely review it, and we are starting to do. We have a newsletter going out mainly in our financial planning division, but we're going to start doing a bit more in accounting, and definitely we'll be using data as well.
Okay, well, we'll go into that in a minute. And government grants. Are you doing anything on government grants?
I actually went into that recently, and I struggled a little bit. So going through that will be good. I had a client looking at a government grant recently.
Okay.
Entertainment area.
I'm going to take you to there shortly, but what's in the members alert is you can check on the deadlines. So this covers the Australian, state, all the states and territories. So you're in Victoria, so if you want to see what the Victorian deadlines are, there they are. Now, a lot of the grants are ongoing. Some are open even though they closed on the 30th of June. For some reason, there's some of these drought assistance just keep on going. But the main thing in there is if a grant is coming through to being closed, it can be closed, and it just gives you an idea of what's going on. There's a lot of grants. So that's included in that material. And I shouldn't have done that. Okay, so any questions so far? Because we're now going to move up into a product package area.
Anyone? No, not currently.
Okay. So what I thought we might go to first of all is, after I log back in, I hit the wrong button then. Okay, we'll start first of all with the Business Plus newsletter, so that those of you who haven't seen it. So if you give us or everyone's email addresses, everyone will get the newsletter. And what I'm going to show you now will be the format you get it in. There's past editions. If you want to go back and check them, you can. But we produce this each month except January. But in May, there's 2 extra editions. One's on the federal budget as it affects small business, and the second is on an end of year tax planning checklist. Now, this is directed to businesses, SMEs. It is not full of taxation articles because SMEs tell me that they don't like getting taxation articles from their accountants. They think that's your business. When you receive it, it has that logo on there from ESS BizTools. What we say to you is remove that before you send it out. One of the reasons it's badged ESS BizTools is for when we send it into firms to everyone that we've got their email, so they know where it's come from. The articles are fairly short and sharp, and if it's too long, we'll continue it over a couple of months, because we're trying to ensure there's something in every publication to suit someone, or to suit every client, if I put it that way. So we talked about the Australian Business Growth Fund announcement. The Financial Review had an article a few weeks ago on the level of what they call bank of mum and dad loans. So it was parents and grandparents loans to SMEs. They claim they're about 26% of the borrowings by SMEs. And I then had an idea. This is an ideal group of companies that might be seriously able to look at crowdsourced funding, because if their parents or grandparents are reaching the age where they might need some money to go into a nursing home or just to generally retire, they might be looking for that money back, and that could present some problems. It's going to be very difficult, I think, for a lot of our clients to borrow money over the next few years in the aftermath of the Banking Royal Commission and people tightening up on everything, and the drop in real estate values, particularly where you are and in Sydney, is going to affect a lot of the lending ratios. So crowdsourced funding could come into play there, and that's why we mentioned that. We gave an update on crowdsourced funding so that your clients are aware of it. Thresholds for large proprietary companies have been changed. We gave an update where we just
Has that gone through yet, you know?
Has
that gone through yet?
It was an announcement by the Treasurer, so yeah, I think it's happened under the change announced by. I missed that.
I think it went to public discussion in November or December, and they're waiting on an outcome still.
Oh,
so
okay.
Eagerly waiting on an outcome.
The article I read said it had announced the change to the thresholds. I'll check on that.
If you have that, can you forward that to me ASAP? I have a client very critical at the moment with that.
Okay. Are you monitoring your PPSR registrations? That's what I just talked to you about. The 7 years is up. I thought it was an opportune time to publish what the PPSR had put out on, because the 10 millionth registration had just taken place, so that some of the businesses could get an idea that, you know, there's a whole lot of registrations going on in various categories. Are they attending to theirs? It's there for no other reason than that, just to perhaps prompt people. The government, we talked about before, telling big businesses to pay, and they're going to have a carrot and a stick approach to that, because if they don't do it, they're claiming that big companies will not get government contracts. That's going to be interesting. And then we had a bit of an economic update. We called it the good and bad news, where the economy's going, customer satisfaction. This section at the end, which is attention accountants, is details of material you might want to read to give you a bit more information on a matter we've talked about in the newsletter. So if you want to know more about crowdsourced funding, it's just showing you where it is. And back where I clicked in to come into this area, these papers were listed, and if you just click on there, it'll take you directly to them. That all come about because one of our subscribers some years ago sent the newsletter out without reading it first, so it just got sent to the clients. And we had an article about Export Market Development Grant in it, and he obviously knew nothing about that grant, and he started getting some phone calls from a couple of his clients, and he was rather embarrassed. And I said, well, if you'd read the letter first, you would have noticed that we were talking about it before you sent it out. But we will include some reference material where we've got something on that subject within ESS BizTools. Our suggestion is you remove that before you send this to your clients, and put something in there about your firm. Prosper Solutions has got a webinar going to be on in 2 weeks' time, or one of your clients might have won Business of the Year in their locality, or one of your team might have finished their examinations or whatever. There might be a company directors course coming up, and a couple of your people are going along to, does any clients want to go with you? That type of thing. Okay. So that's the newsletter. It's uploaded to the ESS BIZTOOLS website on the second Friday of a month at 12 noon Australian Eastern Standard Time, and you can then download it and process it. We've only been late twice, and we got reminded because a couple of firms sent us emails because they had people standing by to do the processing of the newsletter. Crowdsource funding, equity raising. We've talked a little bit about that. Let's go to that now. This is a product package, and this will give me an opportunity to give you an overview on how we go about these product packages, because I'm not going to go through all of them. Every product package has got a procedure control form. So when you log on to it, you can see they've got the procedure control form, and then there's a list of the material that's in the product package to guide you through the process. Now, this is obviously crowdsource funding. This is very new. We are doing some further work on this product package later this week, early next week, putting in some of the additional information that's now come to play, because the first 90 days was up 3 days ago. So the legislation in its revised format started on the 18th of October, and the intermediaries have got their websites all running a lot more effectively than what they were when we released this material, first of all. And as they go along, ASIC's agreeing to a relaxation of some of the black letter law, if I can put it that way, or there's agreements being reached between ASIC and the intermediaries as to what can be done in some circumstances. So that's the updates we're doing. As a subscriber, you get all the updates as we write them and put them into the system in that 12-month period. So this is the procedure control form. You could badge it, although this is basically an internal use form. We give a summary of what we're trying to achieve here, so you can read that. So the material, we think, will give you some background information on what crowdsource funding is all about. There is some marketing material to assist you with communicating to your clients and your prospects as to what you're doing. And we do suggest that you present a seminar or a webinar. And then we take you through the whole process. So I'll just skip through to that. We have 5 main sections, which is summarized there. And within the whole process, then the roadmap references, we're calling it, is really the working area that you're going to be working with your clients. So we go to the preparation. There's a video there which gives you a general overview of what crowdsource funding is all about, so you can watch it. There's a paper and a webinar. So you've got a video and you've got a webinar. Some people prefer one over the other, or you can watch both, trying to make sure that you're familiar. I had a prospect in Wollongong asked me yesterday how long it would take. Now I happen to know this particular guy. How long it would take him to be familiar with crowdsource funding to confidently talk to clients, and he made the comment that he virtually knows nothing about it today other than what he just learnt from me in the previous 20 minutes on a phone conversation. I said 3 to 4 hours if he sits down and reads our material. That's assuming you don't want to go back and read every section that's been now included in the Companies Act. You can do that if you like, but we've done that. We've scanned it and made sure that the products which we've prepared cover all of the requirements, because we're producing the templates which we're suggesting you then use. We then have the marketing material. So within the system, there is an eligibility matrix which will help to determine whether the client's going to be potentially suitable for crowdsource funding. There are 5 legal questions to be answered, which I'll show you those in a moment. But then we've gone through and looked at who else might be interested. Once their turnover is under $25 million, they're not on a stock exchange, and their gross assets are worth less than 25 million. They're the 3 key legal questions. But what's going to differentiate them that they might be interested in this? And one group will be the people who are keen to get bigger. They're wanting to scale up. They currently got turnovers of 2 to 3 million. They want to double that in the next 2 to 3 years. Well, they're going to need additional working capital. And unless they've got assets that they can mortgage to raise that money, they're probably going to have problems in getting that cash for their inventory, for their debtors, for their new plant and equipment, or whatever they're going to need. And crowdsource funding, I think, was designed for those sort of companies, because they're going to have some interesting stories to tell. So there's various marketing material there that you can go through, and then you're able to click onto it. There's a webinar to present to your clients or prospects. There's some material you can place on your website about crowdsource funding. There's an article. We occasionally write an article called Improving Your Bottom Line, which is for our subscribers to send to your clients. If you wish, you badge it, you can edit it, you can personalize it. But that's part of the role we believe we have with you people as our subscribers. There's an article, SMEs can now crowdfund. So there's various marketing material, including I probably skipped over it, but there is a template for an article you can send to your local media or to the suburban newspapers or whatever you've got in your location. We then have section C, which is the quotations and the proposal, to make sure that you've covered yourself with your client. And then there's various articles. The section that you can read, and you might give some of them to your clients. Section E, corporate governance concessions. I've left them there. They no longer apply, they only apply to a company that had been admitted into crowdsource funding prior to the 19th of October 2018, and that's a company that had upgraded to becoming an unlisted public company. There's no longer any requirement for that, and the benefits are basically no longer there. So we just covered that. But then we move into the step-by-step process. So the client matrix, and which we might just go on to that one. So is there any questions on crowdsource funding?
Not at this stage for me.
Okay.
We'll definitely go through it.
Yeah, I think this is a great opportunity for accountants to really claim this space. I'm old enough that I was around when financial planning started to move away from accountants, and that was in the 80s, in the early part of the 80s. Up to that stage, there was really no financial planning industry in Australia, but if people wanted advice, they went to their accountants. And then along come some of the financial planning companies, and they got started. And I think accountants stood on the sideline and were a bit bemused by these people. And for a long while, we really let that market slip out of accountants' hands. Now, I know some of you, and you mentioned before, you've got financial planning, but there's a lot of accountants that have missed out on that around Australia. And I know some of them are not prepared to put in the professional development hours that are necessary. But I really would prefer that this didn't happen to this area. Now, no one's got any sort of historical association with crowdsourced funding. It is brand new. Some people are concerned that the intermediaries will be able to do the work that I envisage you can do. And the answer to that is they cannot. The legislation says that the intermediary is to review the offer document, not to prepare it. And it's the phrase up to there that's important for you, and I'm going to cover that in a moment. So this is the eligibility matrix. So the sort of things we're looking at are, first of all, the legal requirements, and there's the 5 legal questions. I suspect a lot of your clients are going to qualify for that. Turnovers under 25 million. If they're, and it's group turnover, please, you need to make sure that all the companies are brought into that, and it's also group gross asset value. And I've put in there, so because some people seem to be misunderstanding and they think that this is like early stage innovation companies where the age is important. It's not. It could be 1 year old or even 1 month old or 95 years old, doesn't matter. And neither does the business or the industry category worry. And then I've listed, now we got a couple more characteristics to add to this, but characteristics of companies that I think might be showing might be indicating to you that they could be someone at least worth having a conversation with or inviting them to a seminar or a webinar. And that's what my suggestion would be. You use this matrix to say, geez, this client is very ambitious, or they're wanting to acquire other businesses, or they have got that big audacious idea. Is it the CEO got an exciting vision? Have they got some debts that are secured on other people's assets? Might be the mother-in-laws of the chairman. I always pick on mother-in-laws. And she now wants to go and buy a unit on the Gold Coast or something. So she'd like to get her money back. Well, crowdsourced funding could be a way of getting that money. There could be succession problems in businesses. The founder gets to the stage where he'd like to retire. He's got 1 or 2 of his children working in the business, maybe even grandchildren, but they've got no money. They haven't got the money to buy him out, and he's been ploughing everything back into the business. He's literally got no superannuation, and I know of a number of these issues that have occurred over the years where people just putting all their money back into their business. Crowdsourced funding could be a way of helping them to start a retirement plan by the company raising some capital. Now, when I put this to a prospect the other day, the younger person in the business, the son, very quickly said to me, "Oh, I don't want that to happen for too long. I want to own 100%." I said, "Well, as long as the company's going good enough, and he was going to be the CEO on the new arrangement, as long as you make enough money that you're able to buy those people back out, buy their shares back off them, I'm sure they'll be happy to sell them to you." But it's one way of looking at succession. And the other big opportunity here, are you aware of early stage innovation company capital raising?
Yeah.
Okay, so you remember that's restricted to a company that's under 3 years of age, expenditure under $1 million, income under $200,000. Well, there's a lot of other people developing new products, processes, or services. So they miss out being classified as an early stage innovation company, but they are very eligible for crowdsourced funding. And the other one that's got to go into that list now that I mentioned before is the companies who are scaling up, and undoubtedly that would fit under a couple of these other definitions. I've just decided we're going to put it in there as a separate heading because there's some people who that's how they see what they're doing. They're scaling up. They're wanting to become a bigger company. Well, with a turnover limit of $25 million and someone that's currently in the $3 to $5 million bracket, they can scale up a fair bit before the turnover level becomes a problem for them. So that's what that form's all about, to help you determine who might be potentially eligible. What we're going to add to that, because we've now got access to the intermediaries' websites, We know how much money's been raised already, and there's probably about $15 million on my quick reckoning that's been raised by crowdsource funding companies since the 18th of October. Some of them must have had everything ready on day one and just got straight into the market. But we also now have a list of the type of businesses that are trying to raise money. And that's going to be in our members alert, which, as I said before, I'm finishing this afternoon, and you'll be getting that in the next few days. So it's worth looking at. It virtually covers every conceivable concept that you could think of, from a digital bank that's raised $2.4 million to a network of funeral directors and celebrants. So that's a pretty wide stretch. And in between, there's all sorts of businesses, from childcare type arrangements to tutorials delivered via webinars, etc. Okay, so this procedure keeps on taking you through. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with crowdsource funding, there's this group of people called intermediaries. They have been appointed by Australian Security Investment Commission. They are the gatekeepers, is what the then Treasurer, now Prime Minister, called them when he first introduced this legislation. So their role is to check all the documentation, but to give some advice. And when they're happy, they are prepared to upload the offer document to their website, and that is where any potential investor has to go for the 90-day period to subscribe. Okay, so having shown you that, I'm going to leave the rest of that crowdsource funding for you to have a look at, and if you've got any questions on that, please come back to me, because I think our time's just about up, but I want to go to government grants if I can, if no one's got any other questions on what I've said so far.
No, all good.
Okay, let's just, I'll just bring it over here, save time. This is ESS
Sorry,
BIZTOOls.
Peter, I have to leave for an appointment. Sorry, Peter, I have to leave for an appointment, so I'll leave you with the team.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Narelle.
Right,
have a good
thanks
day.
very much for your time.
Yeah, we'll only be another couple of minutes. I just want to show you grants. So this is ESS Biz Grants is on a separate website, and you've got a separate access supplied to you for here. So you have got some explanations here as to what the various terminologies about. What we have done is analyse government grants for the Australian government, but also the Victorian and the other state and territory governments, and have configured them into which type of client, which type of business that they're targeted at. So the first thing that's got to be completed is a client profile. So this is what a blank profile looks at when you go to it. You need to badge it, of course. You can put a code name or number there if you wish, because we are using the cloud. You need to identify what type of entity the business is, because there are different requirements for grants. We want to know whether they export goods or services, because that's linked to some of the grants. The same with imports. Number of employees is very important, so they're the bands that apply. And this is full-time equivalent employees. We ask whether they've got an ABN. Basically, to access every grant that we've got in this system, they will need an ABN, because that's the law. The years operating is also important, and they're the bands. Most grants are now pitched at people in business for over 3 years, not all, but most. The turnover levels is important, because grants can come in at different turnovers. They've got to be registered for GST. We want to know whether they're tax exempt. The vast majority of grants in our system are only available if you are not tax exempt. And we also ask them if they're involved in research and development. That's not talking about a company, so we're not worried about $20,000 worth of expenditure. We're just linking it then, if they're doing research and development, they may be interested in some other areas. Now you then hit save. What I'm going to do is go back and find you a sample one. Well, that samples all over the place, as you can see, but I was using one the other day, and we'll call it test client, and we'll go back. So we've gone through this and we said they're a company, they do some exporting, they had 16 employees, they've been operating for 7 years, they had a turnover of about 6 million, so it was 1.5. They were steel fabrication type business. They were registered for GST, they're not tax exempt, and they were doing some R&D. We then had to insert the address. We said they were in Townsville. We put in the postcode, and that the system immediately told us that Townsville's in the outer regional Australia. So those definitions are inner metropolitan, outer metropolitan, outer regional, remote, and very remote. And there are some government grant benefits in those various areas that come up, and that also helps us in our linkage. The financial is just a repeat of what we've put in. The business industry code is normally the code you have included on the client's tax return, but just make sure it's still appropriate. You can add in our system as many of these numbers as you want to, so it will go on for a few pages with the definition. This one here, we've said that's the only one, but I've seen some with 20 odd, must have be a very multi-purpose businesses, but you can put as many in as you like, as long as it's an accurate idea of what the business does. You then hit search grants, and what you will initially get is a pending list. Now, I've been playing with this one, so I've got 12 there in potentially and 1 there, so 13, and we got 15 here. So originally we had 28 in pending. So this is a list of grants which we still haven't considered. So what you would do is you're able to flick through this and decide whether you think the client might be interested in some of those things. Now, this was a Queensland business, so mentoring for growth. If it's just a state, it's in brackets after the name. So we might start on the restart wage subsidy so you can just see how the system works. You get a brief overview of what this is all about. If you want to know the funding, you can click onto that and it tells you the funding on that particular grant. What we call the application toolkit, you can bring up an article, the paper we have written on this grant. So you could print that and give that to your client or send that to your client. So it's explaining what that grant's all about. And we also have a checklist. No, we don't. Well, that's just talking about the grant requirements. In some of them, we've gone through and produced some of the more complicated, a complete dissection of the work that you would have to do if you were doing the application. The additional criteria has a couple of questions. So this one, are you a legal entity with an Australian business number proposing to employ someone aged over 50 years? Is the proposed employee an immediate family member of the proposed employer? Well, he's not, so we answer no. And that was the right question because the ticks come up. Sorry, the right answer to that question. Does the employee have an outstanding workers' compensation claim against the business? If you had yes, they're not going to be able to participate in this. Will the employee work for a minimum for 15 hours per week? We say yes. Does the employer know of any reason why the job will not continue indefinitely? We answer no to that because the government is hoping that this is not just for, this job is not just going to be created for this person for the period of this funding. Is the position a commission, self-employment, or a subcontractor position? The government doesn't like that, so we'll click no. Now, when I click that last answer, it came up and said apply now. If I went back and changed that answer to yes, and then I closed, what this is going to do is if I go to potentially ineligible, you will now find that the wage restart subsidy is being placed there because we're not eligible for that particular area. But we could go back to there. We just bring it up and say, no, we answered that one incorrectly. We should have answered yes. No, sorry, we should have answered no. That apply now, if you clicked on that, you would go to the government's website, but we don't want to do that because I want to show you the report. So we hit close. What should now have happened is in potentially eligible, that grant we just looked at is now included, restart wages. We had 12, we now got 13. So we say that will do us because you can go on and play with this. You've got the access to it. We're now going to print the report. So this would be a report which would have the name of your client. It's been prepared by Prosper Solutions. And there we're telling them there's 13 grants. And here's a précis on the grants. The fine print, you can read that at your leisure, but it's basically saying you've got to go through the grant application process before any of this is approved. So there's some discussion about the various grants. So any questions?
No, that looks good though.
I think this is your entry into advisory work, to be honest. There's a lot of work that the clients are probably reluctant to commission you to do unless they get a government grant. But if they get a government grant and the government's basically paying 50% of it, they will proceed. In the first instance, I think this is a public relations exercise for you to undertake. My recommendation is you go through and complete that profile as you're finishing the annual accounts for the client, unless the client comes into you and says, can you check whether I might be eligible for a grant? And if so, always fill that profile. That profile takes about 3 minutes to complete. It's in the cloud, so it's there for next year. All you might have to do is a bit of fine tuning next year. Incidentally, where I said put in the address, you can put in, I think we've made provision for at least 6 addresses can go in. So if you've got a company that's operating in your part of Victoria, that's also in New South Wales and Western Australia, put those addresses in as well, because you will probably then identify some grants that the New South Wales or the Western Australian governments have got that they might be eligible to apply for, and you will get those details. So our recommendation is that you do the profile, and a member of the team that's working on a client should be able to do that. I accept that it's probably going to need an experienced accountant or a manager to go through and make some decisions as to whether the client's going to fit some of those profiles we just talked about. And that might take, I keep on thinking in units, but 2 units, 12 minutes, just to go through and look at that. You could do that with the client on the other end of a computer or a phone, or you could have the client sitting in front of you. It's probably going to take longer that way. But my initial aim is that when the client comes in for their annual accounts review, you're able in a very proactive manner to say, look, we may have identified some government grants for you. Here's the report. So you're able to present the report to the client. You can send them or photocopy those articles that I showed you in the toolkit and say, here, you can read about it. And what the client is going away is, I think, with a bit of satisfaction that their accountants have shown some proactiveness by bringing this to their attention. Now, the ball's then in the client's court. There's no doubt about that. The client can do a number of things. The client can say, thank you very much, but no thanks, which in my experience about 2 to 5% might say. Some people just hate the government and don't want to know anything about them, no matter what political colour they are or whether it's state or federal, and I've given up trying to convince those people. But most others will go away and say, we'll have a look at this, and then their question's going to be, who's going to do the applications? And
that's what I was going to ask. do you see that many accountants are assisting their clients with that, or the clients are doing that on their own?
Most are coming back to the accountants. Some of the accountants are coming back to us, and we will take it on a fee-for-service basis. We'd prefer you to do it because it's part of your knowledge of what your clients are doing, and you know the clients. We don't. But it's a matter then, and I probably picked on that wrong grant there before because we have for most of the grants a detailed dissection of what's required in the grant, so you can use it to prepare a proposal or a quotation. So we got columns for you to put in 2 or 3 names as to who might be working on it, and you can put some units or times if I don't know what you work on these days, and your firm, are you working in 6-minute or whatever units you're working in, or if it's just straight minutes. And then you can add it up so you're able to give the client a proposal. I don't agree with percentages of the grants, and I don't think the Institute or the CPAs do anymore. So it shouldn't be a percentage. I think it's a fee for service like any other services you give your clients. But the client's also going to be prepared to cooperate in that because it's very unusual that they will get a grant without them having a conversation with an officer representing the government department, because they will want to talk to the client. They want to make sure this client's fair income, and so should you, of course. So if you've got a client, and I'll be rude now, it's a bit of a rat bag in inverted commas. I don't know if I'd even prepared this report for them in the first place. But the ones who are, good, sound people who are not going to criticise everything and not always out looking for a fight, because some people just seem to like fighting with government agencies. If they're prepared to be cooperative and work and understand they're getting a benefit out of this, they're the ones to deal with. And what it does is open up the opportunity for work. I've done thousands of dollars worth of work based on government grants in things like business plans, some marketing, some workplace health and safety, human resources areas, not very advanced, but some. I've done mentoring advice to internal boards, set up boards of advice, been on a board of directors, in effect as the acting chairman for about 18 months in one company that the government paid for 12 months, then the client paid for another 6 months or so. That was to mentor, in that case, one new director, and also get the board working as a board of directors, getting them used. So we set up with their accountant and their solicitor has been board members on a board of advice basis, and getting that structure working, because that one I'm just talking about was an $8 million turnover. The company wanted to get to $15 to $20 million in the next few years. They're in a growth area, but the way they were set up, it would have been a bit of a mess, I think. But I knew nothing about them. They come to a seminar that I spoke at, and they were ones that were said to me that their accountant only does tax work, and the firm they were using at that stage was part of the Big Four. So I was quite amazed at that response, but it wasn't my role to question that. I spoke to that accountant later on about all that over a cup of coffee one day, and he said, that's all right. I really am only happy in the tax and annual accounts work in any case. So maybe he'd already had actually communicated that to them. I don't know. But it's interesting work that you can get involved in government grants. And especially if you get a client that might be able to apply for accelerating commercialisation, that's a $1 million grant. They need to have developed a new product, process or service. Most of them need project management, and I've done a bit of that over the years. It's very interesting work. So it does open up a lot of opportunities. And just going back to crowdsource funding, if you've got a client that has invented a new product, process or service, then in finding their 50%, because they might get the government grant, but they're going to be able to prove that they can raise the other 50%. That could come from raising capital as crowdsourced funding. So any questions?
No, it all looks very good.
My suggestion to you is have a go. Have a go at grants. Try to pick your clients at first so you get some confidence. Perhaps run a seminar or a webinar on grants, and there's a seminar in our system there that you could present just to find out who might be interested. One of the common complaints that some SMEs make, and some can be quite vocal in their criticism at times, is that their accountant never told them about a grant, and then they get very upset when they find out that one of their competitors has got that grant. So they like to know, businesses. Sure, they might say no, they're not interested, but they like the idea that their client has communicated about that grant to them, and it's not when they've come in and asked questions. My suggestion for you in doing advisory services is try to be on the front foot. Try to be in that proactive vein with your clients. And I think you will then grow your business in that area that Narelle was talking about earlier. Okay, so for you people there, if you ever have any questions or comments on ESS BizTools, we are only a phone call or an email away. Please contact us. We will get all of your names so that you get any communications we send out, which will include the Business Plus newsletter each month. And we will talk to you again later in the year.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, have a wonderful day. Goodbye.
You too. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.